Hey folks, welcome to Smart Simple Fit. Today I've got a special guest for you all. On this episode, I'm going to be talking to Aidan Insua, a good friend of mine. We're going to be discussing a few different things that we're very passionate about on the subjects of lifting. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Go ahead and click on Aidan's YouTube channel and his Instagram profile, Aidan Insua, and subscribe to him. He makes some great videos. He just recently started posting more to his YouTube. He's quite active now on it. The guy's absolutely jacked, mugs me into oblivion, great physique, just started bulking again. So, yeah, absolutely. He is a great example of what a natty can achieve if they put in like a decade plus of good lifting experience, bulking and cutting, and just trying hard in general. So, Aidan, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing, man?
Glad to be here, man. Thank you. This is actually the first time I've talked to you.
Yeah, it
voice
is.
to voice.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's pretty cool.
On Instagram for like what, close to a year now? Maybe like 8-10 months. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
I just remember I came across your YouTube channel. I was like, man, I agree with everything this guy is saying. Like, this guy's just spitting facts constantly. So,
I appreciate that. I take that as a big compliment.
For sure.
I remember at one point, folks, Aidan messaged me. He goes, "Hey, what state do you live in? You know, we should hit up a workout together sometime." And I'm like, Ontario. Aidan's let's just say he's a bit further away from me than that. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I'm just like right underneath.
Same time.
But all the way
down. All the way down. So as far as power building being effective, right? Is it a good investment of your time to be not only dedicated to the big three, but to try and manage that while also, let's say, general bodybuilding, right? Just trying to have an aesthetic physique, being well-rounded, the arms, the legs, the core, you name it, the front and the back, left and right, all that jazz. You know, is it an actual worthy investment, or are you, as some might suggest here on YouTube Fitness, are you setting yourself up to spin your wheels and, you know, get a suboptimal amount of either, right? Like, oh, if you try hard to get both size and strength and power build, are you going to get less of both? What do you think about that, Aidan? I want to hear your thoughts before I chime in.
I think a lot of people kind of take that out of context and they look at the Giga Arch benchers or like the super wide stance sumo, like people that are just trying to boost their numbers just through that. And if you take someone who's got like a good close grip bench, you know, a good conventional deadlift or RDL or like a high bar squat instead of the wide stance low bar squat, you're going to see a lot of transfer to size from that rather than like power building in the sense of, oh, I'm going to be a power lifter completely just bending the rules and then doing accessories after. So it kind of depends on how you go about it. I pretty much always stuck to like the more bodybuilding style form. So when I did powerlifting, it was pretty much like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think making the qualifier to the big three, saying, hey, I'm going to do big three, but I'm also going to do it to a standard that's a bit different. That, you know, maybe it's because you have a perspective of this style will be better for this hypertrophy outcome, or even for some people, I would say, and you might agree with this as well, depends on what your body's built for. Like some people can just handle, you know, a lot of bench press and not worry about those elbows getting beat up as much. Or someone's better built for that back squat and they don't have to worry about their lower back. Whereas if you're someone like me with real long femurs and, you know, I've got good ankle mobility, but I still can't really squat knees forward and upright. So I do a lot of front squats to relieve my back. So I think, would you agree that how
you're crazy
is also relevant?
You're a lot stronger than me on the front squats.
I don't know, man. I think you need like a front squat specialization arc.
I will. At some point I will, I promise you. But
yeah,
it's going to have to wait for now. But
it was, I remember your previous PR was like a 405 ATG squat. I can't remember if it was pause or not. Yeah.
That was my most recent. That was 405, like paused completely ass to ankles. That was at 183 body weight. But I used to be repping 405 back when I weighed above 200, like years and years ago before any sort of.
That's crazy. To me, that's just crazy. But, so I think one thing I've learned from like researching the topic and then even like my own experience, the high bar front squat gap is maybe smaller than some what people think. So if you could high bar ATG squat 405, I think you could be front squatting 315 in like no time, man, if you just like committed to it. Maybe not if it's like crushing your collarbone, but you just got to play with it.
That's my thing, man. I'm such a wuss with the like when I do this or when I do any of that stuff, like I just get so much, the bar just weighs in on my bones because I don't have much here to pad it right now. But,
Interesting.
Maybe when I get a little bulkier again, I'll
get fluffy, put on a t-shirt, put on a sweater, get some chalk on there, get that sucker.
3 hoodies.
That's right. Kevlar
just like
vest.
Wear some armor. Yep.
That's right. Awesome. So on the back to the topic of power building, do you think it really that the big three lifts are really lacking that much in terms of hypertrophy, modified or not, powerlifting standard or not? Do you think they're really lacking, or are they actually pretty good at hypertrophy, just in their own right?
If you're built in the way where a bench press is going to work your chest, more so than your triceps, if you got like long arms and you get that range of motion and stuff, I mean, that is going to build plenty of muscle. It's not like dumbbells are going to be much better or better at all, but I do both. I mean, I do like my chest workout is like Larson press and then, incline dumbbell press with a pause, stuff like that. So I don't know. Honestly, I think people are just getting a little dogmatic for no reason, just to be unique and be different. But, if you have good form and you're not doing some weird uber arch wide grip powerlifting bench, like the bench press is going to make your chest bigger. That's just how it is.
Absolutely.
What I've seen.
And I think I would analyze it and go even a step further. Like, do you know who Benjamin McIntyre is?
Yes.
Yeah, that guy's jacked. He's a teenager. I don't know. He's like 17 or something like
Dude,
that.
I saw him when he first started posting. Like, I was just blown away at the time. And at that time, I was still very much into powerlifting and not into bodybuilding and stuff. But,
what country is he from? Is he from like Norway or something like that?
I think it's like Denmark.
Denmark.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's
like
Danish.
That.
Yeah.
His
like
English
a group of
good,
people.
He's
there's him, Barbell Barbie, and then like the skinny camera blonde dude. They're like all friends that do powerlifting.
Yeah,
and for people who don't know, Ben is crazy. Like the kid's like 17. He can sumo deadlift, I want to say over 600 pounds. And he can bench like 340 or something like that, maybe more. So the guy's crazy, jacked. And how this ties into what Aidan and I were just talking about was like the technique. He's got a pretty good giga arch on his bench. So if you're giga arch benching like well over 3 plates, sure, if you flattened out your back, brought that grip closer, used less leg drive, yeah, it would definitely shave pounds off the bench. But I guarantee his chest looks a lot nicer than people who are just hyper focusing on what's like optimal for fiber direction, or some guy goofing around with plate presses or machines and not really trying that hard. So even if we were to say the powerlifting form with those impressive numbers isn't representative of like a perfect 1-to-1 strength to someone who does it more like Aidan's technique, it's still impressive and it's still hypertrophic. It's just pound for pound a bit different, right? When you start to add that technique. So yeah, for sure. Good.
Like there's guys that can giga arch 455. Like their chest is going to be bigger than mine,
Totally.
Even though I can Larson 315 for a few. Like that's
that's
just so much absolute weight. You know what I mean? Like that 455 is something I don't know if I'll ever touch. So
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to see. And I think people maybe know this without really having to think about it too much. They just don't want to admit it. Like sumo deadlifts, I think Aidan and I would agree, they don't look nearly as cool as conventional deadlifts. Like there's just something classic about a conventional deadlift. But if you can sumo deadlift 600, 700, 800 pounds, 900 pounds, you're a strong dude. I've got respect for that. But if you're goofing around with like 315 sumo, it's like why? Just try harder at conventional. I get it. The sumo makes you stronger.
My conventional is actually stronger than my sumo. My sumo all-time PR is like 535 or something. So
interesting.
Yeah, my conventional passed it up, and to be fair, I didn't really train sumo, and I'm not really built for it. I got like a super long torso with a little bit longer arms, so conventional comes more naturally. But yeah, I mean, if I could sumo 600, I would expect quite a bit of gains from that.
Totally, man. Totally.
Especially in the legs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's intense on the legs. Now, how tall are you? Are you 5'10", 11, something like that?
I am 5'10" and a half or
Yeah, yeah.
5'11",
I
whichever.
won't shortchange it. Yeah, 5'10" and
You
a
know,
half.
it just depends, man. Some measuring tapes put me at 5'11", and some put me at 5'10" and a half.
So I think probably you've seen this too. Sumo, like even like there's like the frame thing, the torso and legs, but also
Mhm.
even just like height. Like you don't
For
see a
sure,
lot of
yeah.
really tall people specialize in it, to be great. Yeah, it's definitely it's a short man's game to take advantage of the sumo technique.
I feel like too, it's like a long legged guy's game, and I have very short legs,
Yep. Yep.
so
Absolutely.
good
Absolutely.
for squat though. Good for squat.
Totally. Totally. So as far we won't name any names today, but as far as like advice on YouTube fitness, whether it's about, strength training or the big three, are there some examples of advice from people who, maybe good shape, good information? Are there some hot takes that you disagree with as far as like how the big three play into your programming, whether or not it's worth chasing strength? Anything you want to dive into there, Aiden?
Like, I'm not sure it's so good to like drill into beginners that strength like doesn't matter, and I've seen some people do that.
Mm,
Um, like if you're still dumbbell curling like 15 pounds, strength matters, like to that extent. Like you got to get that up, and then when you're like, oh shit, I'm getting too strong, I'm doing 50s for sets of 20 on the curls. Let me like make my form harder. Let me do all these other things so I can get back down to a weight that's not gonna ruin my joints and stuff like that. I feel like that's when you can kind of look at like, okay, you know, absolute strength maybe doesn't take the cake now because now it's just getting into like injury territory or something like that. But
yep.
yeah, the way I see it now, it's like guys with no profile picture are writing out these like massive paragraphs about their programming, and it's like, bro, just go lift and get stronger and eat. That's literally it. At least for like a year or two, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to say it. And, I very recently had a discussion with Protein Man, a debate even, and some of the points that I brought up in favor of, it is worth chasing strength and size simultaneously. Like it is really not it's an
It's fun.
inseparable endeavor. You're not going to get less by chasing both, right? And what I pointed out was, and this is, I have to give credit to Steve Shaw, massive iron Steve Shaw. He has this concept of like there's limited variables and unlimited variables, meaning that when you go to modify your program for progression long term, yes, you can add sets, you can add exercises, you can cut down rest time, do rest pauses, do drop sets, so you can do all kinds of crazy things to make the workout more intense measurably, but most of those are limited, right? You can't handle an infinite number of more sets. You can't
20
work out more
sets.
frequently. If you can't go
Yeah.
from squatting 2 or 3 times a week to squatting 6 days a week with the same level of effort on those days. But the thing that can change the most, generally speaking, is the load. You can start with 135 for 10 and years later it'll be 335 for 10 and so on. It'll go from there. So that load being the thing that you can change the most means that no matter what your goal is, whether it's to look a certain way, to power lift, to be an Olympic lifter, CrossFitter, that load increasing, that strength perspective is always relevant.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, maybe they don't see that number going up as fast as they'd like, and then they do it as like a weird cope. Like maybe they're not as strong as someone else who just happens to be stronger, and they go, "Oh well, I'm just going for size." It's like, well, getting stronger on that movement is going to give you size. So eventually, you need to
Totally.
like face that problem head on. Like, why am I weak on this movement still? Why am I not progressing in strength or getting more reps?
Yep.
They kind of like try to avoid that elephant in the room.
All right, so I'm gonna, on that note, I'm gonna make a statement and then see what your perspective is on what, like your definition of strength even means. See how it compares to mine. If I were to, let's say, barbell curl 80 pounds for 15 reps, and then across however many weeks it took me to progress with like reps, if I could do instead of 80 for 15, if I go 80 pounds for 20 reps, if I were to say to you, hey, I got stronger at barbell curls. I went from 80 times 15 to 80 times 20. Does that match your definition of strength? Is that getting stronger in your view? Even though it's not a low
Yes.
rep thing?
Oh yeah, I would say yes.
That's my perspective as
Especially if it
well.
translated over, especially if now when you went to 90, you're also getting more reps on 90
Yeah.
in the same way you did, then I'd be like, yes. But I mean, yeah, maybe at a certain point, if you go way too high reps, it's kind of more like a skill and maybe a little bit more just, you getting better at pushing your limits more and more. But
Right.
yeah, if you go back to the heavier weight and that heavier weight also feels lighter, then you definitely got stronger.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'd even agree with you that perhaps you could say if you kind of like go too extreme in either direction, right? You can hyper specialize in like 1 rep maxes and
Yeah.
by just being good at having that specific technique needed to lift that heavy thing one time, that is a type of skill. But then also like the muscular endurance thing, sure, with metabolites and cardio, if you build the will and
Yeah.
get used to that burn, yeah, you can grind out more reps. So it's not always like a perfect reflection of strength, but generally speaking, I think we'd agree if you can add reps to a weight or go up a weight at that number of reps, you have every reason to say you got stronger in so many cases.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Are there people like debating on the other side of that?
Well, I think, and the reason why I bring this up is here's why, Aiden. When people talk about strength, they usually talk about low reps. They're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing these low rep things, and then they'll say, oh, you shouldn't be doing it technique like a power lifter, doing the big three, and I have a problem with that because they're presenting strength as if it's a very narrow type of training. Like it's the big three, done with a particular technique, done with a particular intensity. Where I think your and I perspective on this, I think we agree largely. It's like strength is a perspective for all exercises with a variety of techniques and ranges of motion and perhaps even a variety of intensities. It's just we're looking at a performance based thing to improve. Like it's not just about measurements and how we look in the mirror and pump versus no pump. It's these numbers reflect a performance going up, and that's our
Yeah.
goal is to bump it up. We're going to set PRs. You were telling me over Discord, we were messaging the other day, your goals for the year, they were crazy. They were awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to see them, man, but they were all performance based, right?
Yeah.
You care about size, but those were performance based goals. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I know too, if I hit those performance-based goals, I had some measurement goals at the end there for like certain body parts that I'm trying to bring up. But I feel like if those performance goals are met, like I know like last time I was bulked, this is what my numbers were. This is how big my arms were. I know if like I beat those, undoubtedly my arms already grew half an inch from last cut to this cut, like at the bottom of the cut. They were 15 and a half last time I was single digit. And this time they were like slightly above 16 single digit. And then, so next time I bulk, it's like I want to get like some crazy pumped number that I've never gotten or something like that. And like the only way I can get to that is getting stronger on all those lifts for reps.
Yeah, all the same lifts that, are your favorites or, work really well for you, the tried and true. That's awesome.
Yep.
And for people who don't know, that's big. Like for single digit body fat to have like 16-inch arms and above or even like close to, like that's really big. Probably a lot of people on YouTube Fitness or Instagram have like 16-inch arms. They're like probably pushing 20% body fat or higher. Which is like,
and it's like a lot of people, they measure their pump and they say that like mine are 17 with a pump right now.
Yep.
I don't really go around saying I have 17-inch arms. I had like one thumbnail where I was like 17-inch arms lean, but I had a pump, and it was kind of just a little clickbait thing. But
of course,
I said in the video, hey, they're 17 with a pump.
It wasn't like you didn't doctor the photo to make it look.
No. Yeah, I'm honest with everything. Like if my measurement is this, and then it's this pumped, I'm not gonna like only tell you the pumped measurement or like only tell you my gym weight to make myself seem heavier. Like I was almost 180 on the gym scale today, but I was 171 this morning. So that's, I could just lie and be like, yeah, guys, I'm 180. Aren't I so huge? It's like, I'm not 180.
No.
Not yet.
No, that's great. You will be. Yeah, bulking and cutting. Yeah, I think that's something great to see. You're talking about honesty with, what it's like, okay, 17-inch arms, but under what conditions, right? And I love to see that honesty, especially from people like, you probably follow pretty closely Jeffrey Verdi Schofield. He's definitely had some posts in the past where he's like, here's me, good lighting, bad lighting, bulked, cut, pump, no pump. Like he's very good at demonstrating like, yeah, I can look like I'm a fat, out of shape blob in this angle and lighting and no pump. But then when I'm like pumped up, good lighting, and even like shredded, it's like a night and day difference. You can almost take transformation photos the same day, and probably some people do, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. Makes a big difference.
Especially if you're in like that middle body fat percentage, maybe like 16%. Like that's where lighting and posing can really be your friend or your worst enemy. You know, you get caught out of context and then you look a little normal. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
There's going to be a lot of people who they hear the simplicity of it and they're going to get mad because they're doing so much more complicated stuff and they haven't gotten to my level of results yet. I
Well,
don't mean that in like an egotistical way, but like,
no, but like
I see it all the time.
yeah.
And there's people who've been lifting for like a year or two and they look at me and like they go around in my gym and they go, oh, that guy's not natty, don't listen to that guy. And so here's my program, with that out of the way.
Yeah, yeah, let's see it, man. Let's see it.
So basically it's just it was 5 days a week, now it's 6 because I'm bulking and I can handle the extra stuff.
Cool.
And I also have a little injury in the bottom of my abs, so I can't do any big compounds like squat and deadlift.
Ouch.
But it's just a pull day, a push day, a leg day, rest. Then it's chest and back, arms, legs, and then it repeats. And the leg days are like, dude, I'm doing machines. I'm doing a lot of calves now, and I'm doing like the glute machine. I'm just doing whatever I can without that squat movement pattern in the deadlift right now.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, all my workouts, they're like 20 to 23 sets. And it's just basically I give myself a amount of sets, and then I basically just go back to what I did last week and I look at how I can one-up myself. And I don't even necessarily do like a double progression kind of thing. It kind of just happens naturally. Every time I bulk, it just happens. But I just go back. So say I did, let's see here. So bicep curls, last week it was 45s for 15, 40s for 12, 40s for 12, 40s for 12. And that's with like the really slow eccentrics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then this week I was like, okay, let me one up that. So I did 50s for 13, 45s for 10, 45s for 9, 40s for 11. So the volume there kind of went up. The first set was more intense, stuff like that. And then pretty much every week, if I'm bulking it goes up slightly, So,
yeah. Yeah.
Even sometimes session to session.
Yeah, yeah. So
I don't overcomplicate it.
Well, and would you say even with all your years of experience and obviously a very developed physique, very strong, it basically sounds like even sometimes, at the right stage of the bulk, session to session progress is observed. Is that true?
Yeah, especially on the movements I'm very passionate about at the time. So right now it's curls. My curl strength has gotten pretty freaky in the past couple months, but not something like my chest supported row. That's going up a lot slower. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's like if your surplus is good and you're really trying your heart out, like it's pretty tough to not make any progress. My bench is flying back up already.
Fantastic.
I've only gained like 3 pounds, and that was pretty much just like a small rebound. So.
No, that's great, and I like the simplicity of it. It really doesn't sound radically different from like what I've done historically in the past, whether I was more invested in talking about science or not, or even just like working with clients. Like people don't want to be given a thing that's complicated. They don't hire a coach because they want you to educate them to become a PhD scholar. They don't want you to be a scientist and do an experiment on them to figure out what works. They want something that works, something that's simple, relatively convenient, and they don't want to get hurt. They just want to get results. So, yeah, that's great to hear. So for all the people in the audience who are listening to that, and they're like, well, what about periodization? And what about what's the percentages? What are you basing this on? How often do you assess and test the strength? And it's like there's layers that you can add to it. But if layers don't need to be there, how much time and energy and thought are you going to put into this extra stuff? If what is simple works, just do it. Modify accordingly. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, guys.
You want to know what my bench progression is right now? It's some people are going to laugh at this.
Yeah, go on.
So I have like the push day and then the chest and back day.
Right.
And on the push day, I start out with a 4x5 Larson press. I always pause Larson. I don't do anything else. So I do the 4x5 pause Larson, and then I do 3x9 pause Larson, like the higher rep, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then next week I just try to add 5 pounds to both, and then I just keep doing that. And like that's kind of like beginner stuff, but it still works for me. So
Yeah.
and if that doesn't show that like you still can make gains off of that simple stuff, I don't know what does. And I've also hit like a whole bunch of bench PRs of absolute ish weight in between then. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, those are
just,
good numbers. Those are good numbers. And I think part of the problem too with this, Aiden, is when people are you mentioned it's like beginner type progress, or sounds like it. When people are talking about definitions of beginner, intermediate, advanced, it's easy to understand what they're getting at when they say like session to session progress, week to week progress, month to month progress, or natural hypertrophy would say you're an intermediate when you start writing your own programs. But these definitions really fall apart unless it's like some, in my opinion, like some strength standard that's based on a huge amount of like data, just like lots of people reporting their numbers. But even then, it's not a perfect way to understand it. And there's nuance to it because, folks, Aiden is coming back from the bottom of a cut. Like he's coming out, he's already been bulking a bit, but it's not a lot.
like 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days. So you'd expect.
I still have like the death face and like the skinny neck and all that going on. So
Bruh, I'm Myron. Because
you gotta have me on again in like 6 months, and I'll just be like,
yeah. Well, even now you're just sitting there. You've got like a vein on your shoulder, and I'm just like trying not to stare at it.
Oh, man,
no, it's good.
Appreciate
But you'd expect coming out of the cut, the gains would be aggressive, and you know from this experience, right? A lot of what your early bulk gains are, they're not necessarily lifetime PRs. You're gaining back what you partly lost from the bulk. So it wouldn't
body
make
weight
sense.
PRs usually.
Usually, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, hitting a number at a lighter weight, which is totally worth celebrating. But you wouldn't tell someone, "Hey, you're advanced. Don't ever expect to make session to session progress." It's like, well, depends on what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the peak of a strength phase when you're already bulked up. We're talking about a guy putting on some mass again after the end of a cut. So that's very relevant to that progress.
It's interesting. All those definitions and stuff, they're kind of, honestly, they don't really matter.
No, you don't need
like
to think about it.
I've had beginners do a similar program to me and just work out with me and make really good progress.
Yeah.
Was it optimal? I don't know, but it worked. Given enough time and effort, they're getting jacked. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I mean, yeah, like I could have been like, oh, let me find the perfect beginner program with like 4x4 trap bar deadlifts and all that. But I'm just like, hey, man, come work out with me. And then they get results. So it is what it is.
And as time goes on, I find I have more problems with beginner recommendations. I really do. Or like maybe not even just the beginners, but just trying to say like, here's my intermediate program and here's my, video for how to make advanced gains and stuff. It's like you're making distinctions that might be helpful or relevant to say, okay, you're getting strong at bench, certain joints are getting beat up. Here's how you can relieve that. That's not necessarily relevant to beginner. I think that type of information can be really good. But if we're just talking about the basics of programming, exercise selection, rep ranges, progressions, it kind of just keeps working, until you need to bulk more and it's like sleep more, clean up your rep quality, So would you
rep
say
quality is huge, man? Like that's like the number one thing I see with people.
Yeah.
Like if I fix that in someone, they instantly start making progress again. Like when you stop swinging weights and you stop bouncing things and stuff like that. Like that's eating up a lot of people's gains. And I see some people in the gym where I see them year after year, and they look exactly the same year after year, but they're still coming in as much as me. But every set they're doing, I probably should say something to them, but I don't want to be like that guy. But everything they're doing, they're just doing this with like triceps like that. I'm like, bro, that's literally not doing anything. I'm sorry, but it's not. Like, and I want to help them because I know, like, if you're doing a tricep workout, you want bigger triceps.
100%.
100%. It's rough, man. Like a lot of like rep quality is probably like the biggest thief of gains, and then I'd say bulking is probably the next thing, and then sleep.
Wow, interesting. I was about to ask you, ignoring sleep and food, would you say rep quality is the biggest thing? And you even put it above those, so that's interesting.
But here's
I
why.
wouldn't say it's wrong. Yeah, I wouldn't say you're wrong.
Because most people already have food and sleep in an okay spot.
Yeah,
But I see like the average gym goer, the rep quality is like probably their worst factor. But the
right,
other
right.
things like are technically more important. Like
Yeah,
sleeping
yeah.
well and eating are more important.
Yeah, it's like if you take it to an extreme, yeah, okay. If you
Yeah,
sleep 2 hours a
four
night and
hours. Yeah,
eat one meal, yeah, it's
yeah.
not gonna work.
Then your rep quality doesn't mean shit. But
Yeah, it's
at
more
least
like
you'll look good while you're doing it.
there's a tendency where rep quality is basically the biggest room for improvement in a sense.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's at least from what I see at my gym and gyms I've been to. That's like the
totally.
biggest factor.
Absolutely, man. So given that that's the case, that rep quality is what's holding back a lot of people, even their sleep and nutrition's pretty okay or pretty salvageable, pretty adequate. How do you feel about people making videos and saying, "Here's my advanced programming techniques"? Does that make you like hesitate and go like, is it really? Should we really even bother saying that these things are advanced? Do you believe that there's such a thing as advanced training techniques, or how do you feel about that? Like, does
Oh
programming
man.
really get more complicated as you get more advanced?
Can you give me an example of an
Oh,
advanced
sure,
technique?
sure. Okay, so let's say, oh, you're more advanced now. You've been training for a few years, you're getting pretty jacked. Now it's time to start doing drop sets or cluster sets or something like
Uh,
that, rest pauses. Like it's a thing to get harder because,
mm,
you're not a beginner anymore. The straight sets aren't enough, so let's do some cluster sets and drop sets and
yeah, I would not agree with that. There's like a couple things I'll do drop sets on, like mainly lateral raises and stuff like that, where it's kind of hard to tell when you've really failed to an extent, or just things that are so light that you feel like you didn't get enough stimulus. But oh man, like honestly, like as much as I can, I just try to push the weight and reps, and I do that on every exercise. And as long as it's still safe and I don't feel like it's messing me up and stuff, like I just keep doing that.
yeah,
And
man.
it's funny enough, the thing that tore this muscle in my ab or below my ab, it was actually
Mhm.
weighted pull-ups. It
Yep,
wasn't like a big
yep.
deadlift, and I was getting pretty strong on deadlifts before this happened. With the 455 for 10 RDL and the 515 for 4 conventional.
That's
Like I would
crazy
have
to
thought
me.
that. I would have thought that would mess me up, but
That's crazy. Yeah, for those who have never seen Aiden on his YouTube doing lifting things or his Instagram, this is a man who can like safely rep out 4.5 plates on RDLs. This man is like tipping over with triple body
amazing, bro.
weight, and it's not touching the ground. He's controlling it. So
Man, it's so fun. Like I really hope this thing heals or whatever, and I can get back to that like later this year, maybe next year.
with due
But
time, hopefully. Yeah,
yeah, but you
usually.
know what? Like some people would take something like this and just like throw everything else out.
Yeah,
Throw the baby out with the bathwater. But it's not bothering me that much. So I'm just thinking like, all right, how can I improve everything else in the meantime, and then I'll deal with this when I have to. And I'm gonna have a
yeah.
doctor look at it soon and stuff. So
That's good. You should. And you know what? That actually leads me to something I want to say for people who are very convinced that the big three, bench, squat, deadlift, are bad investments because of recovery concerns, how fatiguing it is, injury risk. You gave a really good example that causes injury, the weighted pull-ups. Not to say they're bad exercise, they're
mm,
phenomenal exercise, but anything that's like hard enough to be in that top tier of your program, this takes the most effort, time, and energy and weight. I'm trying the hardest on it. You can't just get jacked for free. You can't get strong for free. So whatever you don't do instead of the big three or on top of it,
that's
if it's
gonna be
hard
the
and heavy,
thing.
you can hurt yourself. Could be weighted
Mm,
dips, could be weighted pull-ups, could be leg press. You hurt your back. I've definitely hurt my back on leg press before because I was just pushing it too deep, too heavy, and I
dude,
didn't
yeah.
I didn't control it right. So yeah,
On the same note with the leg press, I think this injury that I have, I'm like 90% sure it's like a little sports hernia, but nothing's like pushed through or anything like that. It just looks
that's
like a
good.
little mini tear.
Hmm.
I think it might have started with the leg press because I remember feeling some sort of like weird thing in my pelvis when I would do leg press, and I would do the deep ROM leg press, and I started light and progressively got stronger, and I didn't do any like ego lifting on it. At that time, at least, I used to back when I was a little bit dumber, but So I was doing like 7 plates on each side, super deep, maybe 20 reps for like a top set. And I would still feel like that little pain in my pelvis, but yeah, it's crazy. The weighted pull-ups, it was like 70 pounds attached for like a set of 10. And I think just on one of the last few reps, I felt something and I kind of ignored it because I was just so in the zone.
Yeah.
But after that set and after leaving the gym that day, I was like, oh man, like something happened there. And
Yeah.
then I looked in the mirror and I was like,
Well, hopefully it's not severe if you're still able to work out. And like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physio or anything, but it sounds to me like the mechanics of the pull up, right? Like that thing stretches you out, the weighted pull up,
oh
right?
yeah,
Having that all that
you're
weight
holding the
below.
weight in front
Yeah.
of your body, like that center
Yeah.
of gravity. It's like your pelvis has to push forward
Yeah.
so much. I've only seen one other person talk about this, and it was like a random YouTube comment. Someone was saying like, "Oh, be careful with your pelvis," and I was like, "What?" But it honestly makes sense now. I had
Totally.
no idea that was even a concern. Like that wasn't even something that crossed my mind. And if I did
Yeah.
know that that could happen, I probably would have figured out a way to
Yeah.
circumvent that. But
Yeah.
unlucky.
I would suspect for something like a weighted pull up, definitely your biggest risks would be like the abdomen or the biceps. Like, don't tear your
Yeah,
bicep doing weighted pull ups. It's definitely happened to people before. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It can happen, guys. People talk a lot about, this is an interesting one, weighted stretch, right? Getting that stretch mediated hypertrophy. Um,
Hmm.
and you know what? Look, there's a consequence to stretch. It probably was a weighted stretch that did Aidan in the moment that, it was a weight he could control. He was probably doing pretty clean reps. And then all of a sudden it's just one good rep in the right direction with the right amount of muscle control and fatigue. It does you in. So I definitely advise my audience to be more cautious on something like a preacher curl or stiff leg deadlift or Jefferson curl or anything where you're really exaggerating stretch under
Hmm.
load. Because while you might be convinced that that's a good way to get more out of less weight, stimulate more muscle fibers, manage fatigue, it's also true there's such a thing as a precarious position. And maybe you can tell me your thoughts on whether you agree with that. Like, is it true that some exercises have a higher injury risk despite still being good exercises, or is it just a nerdy thing to talk about
Hmm.
risk versus reward? What do you think?
No, I don't think it's nerdy. I think it just depends on the person, honestly. Like, there's certain workouts where like you do them and you just know something is off for like how your body's built or something like that. Um, like all the exercises I do now are extremely comfortable, and I don't get any weird pains, and I don't feel like I'm moving through an unnatural position. But
Good.
some people, like myself included, you do a preacher curl, and you're just like, I don't like that. It doesn't feel good. Or like a barbell curl or an easy bar curl. I feel my
Same.
elbows tend to like my lats and my body literally gets in the way of itself, right? When I do these types of curls, so I just
Yeah,
prefer
you're
like
too
having.
jacked. You're too jacked to do curls
I'm not even
properly.
trying to say that, but like something about my bone structure, it doesn't feel right, and it starts to hurt. So, but with dumbbell curls, and you guys, if you want to go look at my channel, I got some videos of me dumbbell
Please
curling.
do. It's great.
It's not like an ego lifting, swinging, uncontrolled curl. Like I'm really trying to actually use that curl to grow my muscles, but for something like easy bar curl, even with like perfect form and lightweight, it just does not feel good. I just don't do it, and
Yeah.
I've never injured myself. I've been curling relatively heavy for years now. Never had even a slight issue with it. I do have like a
Awesome.
little bit of tendonitis in my forearm, but that's from something unrelated.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I would agree that like the basics work. Especially even just like barbell, dumbbell, whatever feels best. Like for me this year, it's been the barbell curl instead of the standing dumbbell strict curl. It's just so
Exactly,
nice.
and that's where we
Um,
differ. But yeah, it's like you found what feels good, you know, like. And I think for everyone that's going to be different, and everyone's going to have different injury risks with different lifts, just based on
yeah,
their body
yeah.
and the way that they're built. So
And it sounds like you're appealing to, you should trust in your own intuition that, hey, this might not be the right fit for me. I can try and modify technique maybe, but if I make an executive decision as an individual to change exercises, I'm not going to go to a doctor to get it checked, like signed off. Like, can I change my program, please? Like, no, I'm just going to do the thing that feels better. Like, so, trust yourself and how it feels.
yeah, if something is like awkwardly painful, even after you have like perfect form on it and everything is like visually like looks good, you know, like if a coach looked at it and said, yeah, your form's good, if it still feels awkward and painful and you have like a close variation that doesn't feel awkward and painful, like why not just switch to that? Like, I mean, unless you're competing or something and then you have to compare yourself to others, you really don't need to go that route. So
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But I gotta tell you, I'm loving barbell curls because you can put those 2.5s on each side. Can't really do that with dumbbells forever,
no,
right? You
you
get
can't.
stuck. Oh
Yeah,
man, those
that's
five
definitely a
pound
downside.
jumps, man, they kill me.
But you know what's great? Some gyms they go up like they go 45, 47 and a half, 50, 52 and a
Yep.
half.
Yep.
My gym doesn't do that, unfortunately. So I
Yeah.
had to jump from 50s to 55s today, and that was
That's
didn't
big.
go
That's
perfectly
big,
well.
bro.
I went from 13 reps to 8 reps.
It's
So
funny
I'm
you
gonna have
point that
to
out though, the
get on that.
2.5 dumbbell progressions. My gym has those, but they stop after 27.5, like it goes from that to
Uh,
30 and that's it.
yeah,
But that's really good for lateral raises, right?
for sure.
22 and a half pounds or something like that. Like it's a
Yeah,
really nice way for me to get those high rep brutal sets where I don't have to jump 5 pounds on lateral raises is like
it's a
going
lot.
from
Yeah.
lifting a pebble to a boulder. Like it's just such a
Same
big jump.
same with curls, honestly, man. Like
Yeah,
every 5 pounds takes off like 5 reps.
it's
So
ridiculous. Oh
yeah.
yeah. Barbells in general. So we've been talking about the big three. We've been talking about exercise selection and injuries a bit here. Do you think that barbells overall are like how would they stack up as a tool for hypertrophy? Do you think they're upper tier? Are they the best of all the tools? Do you think that there's a lot of limits to what they can do for hypertrophy? How would you say the barbells rank as far as being a hypertrophy tool?
Honestly, I'd rank them just the same with dumbbell curl or not dumbbell curl. Obsessed with dumbbell curls right now. The
It's
same with
curls. He's such
dumbbells.
a bro. He's just thinking about curls
Dude,
all day.
I want to be the ultimate bro. I want to curl 70s
Oh
as
man.
bulk for like a few, for like
I
five.
gotta send you. I gotta send you a video later. There's a guy on YouTube. I think he's Natty. He's curling 85s for
I
reps.
know who you're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's so impressive, man.
he he only weighed like 205 pounds in that video too, which to me that's super motivational to know you don't have to be like a giant, a naturally heavy guy to do that. So, but yeah, anyways, before I just like my brain melts talking about curls too much.
Yeah, the dumbbells.
Yeah, no, I mean I use them both pretty much equally. I mean, the amount of stimulus I get, at least, like, you know, I'll have like the barbell thing first if I am using a barbell for something. Um, so, like, for my push days and stuff like that, the barbell stuff comes first, and then the dumbbell stuff is, you know, icing on the cake. Not that it couldn't be used for like a primary movement, it totally could be as well, but for
Yeah,
me, it's just like the barbell is like the easiest way for me to like overload.
yeah,
And then, like, honestly, on my last bulk, I got to a point where the heaviest dumbbells were not heavy enough. So that is like another reason barbells are good. Once you get like super, not super strong, but like strong enough that you're outgrowing your gym and stuff, there's not as many limits on the barbell stuff. And yeah, I don't know why people get all butthurt about barbells and dumbbells and all that. I mean, they're all good, you know, like they're all, as long as it's not getting you injured and you're progressing, like I don't see the big
totally,
issue with.
totally. Yeah, I'm really passionate about this subject, not only in the sense that I would agree barbells take up a big chunk of my program too, and even for my clients, if they either have a home gym or I can talk them into, upgrading, getting home gym. I've talked a good number of people into getting barbells, and I don't think really any of them regretted it. Some of them were really ecstatic with their results because of it.
It's a great tool.
It's so versatile too,
Mm-hmm.
across the board. But it's not like you have to just pick one. You have lots to choose from. The barbells are just great all around. But in my discussion with Protein Man in our debate, I was introducing myself and talking about my training history, and I started off like a lot of young guys. I was a really skinny kid, and I started doing like push-ups and then pull-ups and different things. Then I got into high school, and all of a sudden going to the fitness room is part of the gym, curriculum, and then there's fitness class. When you got to a certain grade, you were allowed to have a fitness class where literally you got grades just for showing up and working out. It's pretty cool. And I used
We had
everything. I
that.
used barbells, machines, calisthenics, dumbbells, you name it. I used it all. And it wasn't until I go to school for basically like personal trainer school and get a diploma. And then, you start seeing all this stuff on the internet. You realize people have like very, very strong opinions about these tools. But my background is just like some kid who didn't know anything was just, hey, here's a bunch of heavy things. Let's just
Yeah.
like have some fun and lift some heavy things and like see what works.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it.
Absolutely.
What was the main things you guys were disagreeing on, I wonder?
Oh, so the
'Cause I
main
didn't
thing,
catch
so
that
this
one.
was interesting. I tried to summarize it at the end. I said, it seems like we agree. Just doing like if you had a program that was just the big three, definitely not enough to get a good physique. Like it's
No,
just,
and I've
you
seen
know,
that play out. Yeah, that's not enough. You need to.
not a pretty, that's the spider physique, right? With the skinny little
Not
wings.
even, man. It's
Oh,
worse than that. But yeah,
it's worse.
if it's
Oh,
literally just big three with nothing to supplement it, like actually, yeah, spider's a good way to say it.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just like insane pecs, insane back, and the arms are like 13 inches.
Yeah, yeah. And then I
That's
think the other
intense.
thing we agreed on was you don't have to do them. Like they truly are optional, right? And then when it came to the side that we disagreed on was you can target size and strength basically optimally. Like I hate to use that word, but it's like it doesn't. He was trying to argue if you target size and strength, you'll maybe get 70% of both, which I don't even know what that means. But he's just saying you can't maximize both. I'm saying yes, you can. Specifically, power building is effective, like having even powerlifting tech. I would go as far as to say even powerlifting technique on those exercises. You can do that effectively, and
Accessories after, yeah, that's totally fine.
and then I think the last one we disagreed on would be like if I said powerlifting is amazing for hypertrophy, or just the big three are amazing in general for hypertrophy. That would be definitely a firm disagreement. So it wasn't a lot we
Disagree on that.
disagreed on, but yeah, yeah. It depends on how you frame the discussion of size and strength. Yeah.
Because back in the day, I only squatted for legs, and I got some pretty crazy measurements back in one of my bulks. I think my legs were like 29 inches, and my glutes were like 43 or something like that. It looked it was a little too much, and
Yep.
I could pull up some pictures later. I got them on my old phone, but
And some
yeah,
people are like that.
I
It's
don't know,
crazy,
man.
man.
Like,
It's crazy.
I feel like they're pretty good for hypertrophy because all I did was barbell for lower body, and that was honestly what blew up the most at that time. So
Yeah. And then you have people
and
like Tom
powerlifts too.
Platz. Tom Platz would say he swears that squats grew his hamstrings. Like he swears by it. Like, oh yeah, it blew up my biceps femoris or whatever that
I feel
crosses
like
the two.
squats grew my calves, which is probably really weird.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Going
back
deep
when I had
enough.
a crazy squat, and I wasn't even that much heavier than I was. Yeah, it's like my calves were bigger back then. So yeah,
It's interesting.
which
For
is
sure, it's
unfortunate.
interesting, man. Yeah, yeah. So that's good. That's good to see. And yeah, so it's like do barbells help or hurt hypertrophy? Just like any tool, guys, it's how you use them. You need to learn how to use it properly. You obviously can't do every exercise with like you're not going to do lateral raises and look like an idiot flapping seagull wings.
I've seen
Just
people do that too, which is really funny that you bring it up. But yeah, it's kind of pointless. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, certain tools it's just like, it just clicks. It just makes sense, right?
For
But at the
sure.
same time, I see certain limitations in dumbbells, and it's like, if I have this giant dumbbell that I'm trying to do bench press with or shoulder press, I'm cutting down range of motion because this thing is like in my face and it's just like
Yeah.
this giant brick. So when people are like, "Oh, you can get more range of motion on dumbbell bench," I'm thinking if you try really hard to stretch, but if you just go to your
Have a
chest,
point for
like
that too.
it's not going to work as well for some people depending on how you're built. So for me,
Hmm.
just having that skinny bar being the thing that's closest to your chest, neck, and face for overhead
Yeah.
press, I bring that bar either to my throat and like touch my Adam's apple, or I go all the way
Yeah.
to my collarbone. I can't do
Yep.
that with dumbbells. Like they're just too big to do that much range of motion. So
Yep.
just
Even if
depends.
you're touching your shoulders, like at the bottom part, if there's like a whole, bit you're missing out on there. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I was gonna say, I had a friend that I was working out with. I think it was yesterday, and I was doing like the super slow eccentric, like pause
Yeah.
incline dumbbell bench, right? And he told me after the set, he's like, it looks like you're barely even like moving them. He's like, I don't know if the dumbbells are too big or like your chest is big or whatever. And I was just like, I don't know, man. And then I looked at the video and I was like, oh yeah, like that's a big difference from when I flat bench. So
Yeah.
that's a solid point, man. Like you're missing out on a lot of range of motion unless you really do that. Like, I'm not trying to flare my elbows all the way out to the side like that.
Yeah.
That's just
Well,
not me. That's not
and
comfortable.
and have you ever heard of a fly press? A
I
fly press?
haven't. I just don't honestly think I'm gonna try it.
Like Bald Omni Man seems to like it, Natural Hypertrophy, where you
Yeah,
kind of like it's
good
somewhere.
for them.
It's not a full on fly, and it's not a full on press. It's like a
Yeah,
press plus a turn at the bottom to make it harder. So I could see how, yeah, technically on a barbell, even a specialty bar, you can't really move your hands in the motion. So it's kind of, the width is predetermined in a sense. Like you have to stick with the width you choose. But
yeah.
like we were just saying, you gave a really good example. Your buddy's like, didn't look like a big range of motion because sure your hands can move, but what's attached to your hand? This giant brick that you're lifting.
Yeah.
Whereas the barbell, it's like skinny all the way across. So to bring that
Mhm.
skinny thing to your body, yeah, you have more room. So it's like you gain range of motion, but you also lose it. Depends on how you look at it and what movements you're doing. This is also a good. We talked about how complicated programs should be. Aha, projecting experience.
Oh
So,
man.
would you say you've seen some examples of people projecting their own experience onto their audience, maybe giving advice that like just isn't necessary for what they're like? It just doesn't relate to the audience.
Seen quite a bit of that, and it's the same with like the people that get very dogmatic about stuff. I mean, if I wanted to take a card from them there, I could just be like, hey guys, don't do weighted pull-ups because you're going to pull your pelvis. And that happened to me, so it's definitely going to happen to you. And that's basically what they're doing. Obviously not to that extent, but they'll say like, oh, I didn't make gains doing this, so yeah, you won't either. It's like, well, no, I did that, and I made great gains doing that. So, I mean, just by definition, you're wrong. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, you
it
can
goes
do
both ways,
things, it works until it doesn't. And
hmm
then, you shouldn't make the mistake of once it stops working, go, well, it didn't work. Well, it worked for a while. And we could talk about what went wrong towards
Yeah,
the end
why
of
it
the
stopped
journey,
working. Yeah,
why it stopped working. But, those same people who maybe don't like the bench because it's like, oh, yeah, by the end of my bench press relationship, look at how out of control things were. I mean, I'm sure those years leading up to it were juicy and succulent, like very productive. So,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
if you decide to go, okay, I'm going to change all these things and make it as less bodybuilding specific as I can, and then
Yeah.
say, oh, I didn't make hypertrophy gains off of it. It's like, why'd you even do that? You know, like I don't know, when people expect to make like the full blown bodybuilding gains off of like maxing out on sumo deadlift and the wide grip bench and all that, I
Yeah.
don't really get it. But to like hate on powerlifting movements as a whole because that's what you did doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I think there's even examples of exercises that the logic of people, let's say in the noble natty community even, right? Like good examples of jack dudes who really some of them really do like the powerlifting movements and close variations and some of them really don't. Are
Mm-hmm.
particularly passionate against it. It's like the logic of what they're saying. Oh, you're just, you're pursuing this number. The number doesn't translate to hypertrophy. There's so many opportunities for you to either hurt yourself or spin your wheels or just be a power coper or whatever it is. There are exercises that
So
really is
ironic,
true.
bro, because I feel like some of those guys that are saying that are power coping
Yeah,
in
in
a
a sense,
different
right? Yeah, yeah,
definition.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're coping extremely hard.
yeah. Oh,
But
big time. Well, it's right. You can take it in the mirror where it's like this guy is just coping by being strong or by thinking he's strong with this certain number. But if you turn that back around, it's like, are you lacking numbers in that department? Are you insecure about those numbers? It's important to criticize yourself before you make observations like that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, good examples I think of exercises where it is just like kind of an ego lift, let's say. I don't know how you feel about like rack pulls, like especially really high
I've
rack
never done
pulls.
them
Never done them.
personally.
It's like it seems like a good way to just kind of dent up a rack in a bar and just have to spend so much time getting all these plates on. It's like it's the equivalent of a tiny range of motion leg press, in my opinion. That's how I feel about high rack pulls.
If someone wants to do that, like in a gym where there's equipment strong enough for that, I got nothing against that. But
True.
if you do stuff like that in a commercial gym and you are like a strong dude, like if you could rep 500 on deadlifts, you could probably rack pull above the knee like 600-700, right? So for you to go into like a commercial gym and like ruin bars with that, maybe not the best idea, but yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna hate on the lift itself, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. But, you know, the logic of like, oh, okay, you're just like chasing the number at the expense of everything. Some people are, some people aren't. You were a great example. I recently spoke to Kevin Reel, Hypertrophy with Kev, who, I mean, his fitness journey, when I look at it, not that different from yours, like a really good mix of barbells and weighted calisthenics and other things. He's a big fan of the Larson press too. I saw him do, was it 275 for 5 with like some bands for extra tension on it the other. So like he's a
So
strong dude, and you know he points this out too. It's like you don't have to do these things wrong. It's like you can take your time, be patient, humble yourself, stick to a weight for a while. You don't have to one rep max all the time. You don't have to giga arch. These are mistakes that a person makes that are not reflective of the nature of the tool itself.
honestly, I don't even go below a 5 rep max on anything these days. I just don't feel like it, you know. Like
Yeah.
I get plenty of gains doing like 8 reps and up. I do like sets of 5 on bench, but like to do a 5 rep max, like I gotta really feel like doing that. Especially
Yeah,
a
I'm
lot.
at the point as well where maybe you can tell me how you think about this too, where sometimes there's lifts where I think, okay, a heavy single that's like it's not a max, but compared to things I've done in the past for 1 rep, it's an improvement. So it's like a
Mhm.
heavy single, it's a lifetime PR or some kind of PR, but it's not maximal. And that way it's like safe
I
and
like
smooth.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's
It's
my
like
new
taking
thing.
it like when you've earned it instead of like trying to get lucky with it.
Yeah, yeah, like a really safe 96, 97%. And you're like, that's good. I'm not hurt. Because I've definitely paid for it on back squats. Not to say you guys should never do powerlifting and try hard or like max out your back squat. But there was an instance where I did a heavy single lifetime PR back squat. 2 days later, I insisted on doing 5 pounds more for another lifetime PR. The
Oh my
technique wasn't
gosh.
there. My heels came off the ground a little bit. Guess what happens when you have like 300 plus pounds on your back
Fell
and your
forward.
heels come off? My lower back arch to compensate, to
Ooh.
keep the bar balanced, like the center of gravity, instantly hurt my back. So it's
Oh my
like
gosh.
I hit a lifetime PR 2 days before. I could have just been fine with that. You could argue, okay, if your technique was a little bit better, probably wouldn't have got injured at all. But it's little things like that where I got greedy and I paid for it. So I'm really
I
trying
got
hard to
something to
avoid
say on
that.
that as well.
Yeah,
Um, I've seen a lot of beginner-ish, because there is such thing as a beginner, and I'll say that. Like if you have not
100%,
lifted for like more than a few months, you're a beginner. So
100%.
I know I was saying the labels and all that don't matter, but at that point I think it does because
Well,
those
if there's
people.
anyone that makes sense, it's always true. At some point, you began.
Yes, that's true. There is no end though, so
Yeah, that's
no,
right.
they'll they'll be gaining strength a lot quicker and a lot than people who've been lifting for like 5+ years or something like that. So they'll start PRing and they'll think, oh, well, I could PR again. Let me just PR again, and then they'll PR on a deadlift or something like 4 times in a week, and then that never leads to something good. That always leads to an injury and always leads to stuff like that. So I think they need to know to like hold themselves back, even though they are getting stronger, like not to always be trying to hit like a max attempt in the beginning stages like that. So
So with the deadlift example that you gave, that's a classic example of like it's exciting because when you're a beginner, you have unless you know people who lift, you have no idea what you're capable of on deadlifts.
yeah,
So when you see it compared to like a bench press or some other thing, it's just like these huge numbers, like, oh
yeah,
wow, over 200 pounds, over
it's going
300
up and
pounds.
up.
Yeah, it's crazy. Um,
Yeah,
and sometimes I think people get content with how sloppy your deadlift can be as a beginner versus, 6 months later, 3 years later, 5 years later, your deadlift needs to be on point. You can cap back 225 for reps and not pay for it, but you can't necessarily do that with 405 or like 500.
mm-hmm.
So I think one thing I'll see as well is people have a tendency to ignore technique problems on the deadlift because it's such a grindable exercise where the leverage does a ton of the work, and you can just like brute force through it. and then
Yeah.
they set themselves up to pay for it. Is that something you see as well, like cat backs and stuff like that?
So I've seen definitely my fair share of catbacks, but there's like another thing. I'll call it the like reverse catback, and
Mm,
it's not to be like sexist or something, but a lot of females will tend to like arch their back
hmm.
this way when they
Yep,
deadlift. So they're not catbacking like that per se, but they're doing like this sort of thing, and I feel like that is probably just as unsafe.
yeah,
I would
yeah, the
say like
hyperextension.
yeah. So I see that and I'm like, no wonder your back hurts. No wonder your lower back hurts. Like if anything, like obviously like perfectly neutral is fine, but like I do like a slight bend at the upper back,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
where I feel like my lower back has no issues, nothing like that. But I feel like
for
it's
sure.
slightly different for everyone else. But this whole like reverse cat back thing, like man, I've
I
seen
would
people
agree as well that it is
back.
probably for women who have probably on average better hamstring flexibility than like men do. Like it's easy to get into that position where like
Yep,
not only
it's
they can
natural.
stick their butt out, but like arch their back in that position. Like a lot of guys just can't do that. They just don't have the flexibility. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I don't know why a lot with like high school guys they tend to do that as well. I think it's
Do you
just
think
not
part of them
knowing.
it's like in their head where they're thinking back straight,
Yeah,
but in
I
their
think
attempt to
so.
be back straight, it's just like too much.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, 100%.
it happens. It happens,
And
folks.
they think it's straight,
Don't
and then they'll
exaggerate.
look in the mirror like while they're lifting. I'm like, bro, you're gonna pull something doing that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
silly.
Neutral spine is fine. Slightly rounded is fine. You know, don't exaggerate your deadlift technique. I always tell people it's like puff out your chest to like straighten out the torso, lean into it, get your knees in the right position. Start with the bar. Some people say midfoot. I say even closer. Get it close to your shins. For a lot of people, helps their shins be
For me
more
too.
vertical
Yeah.
when they go into the pull. So you don't have to really overthink it. Hinging is hard as a skill. It doesn't come naturally to people as much as I don't know something like a bench press or a pull up or a push up would. But yeah, you don't really have to overthink deadlift technique.
No, yeah, like back when I was really into deadlifts, not even that long ago, obviously, but um, I had like a certain amount of cues in my head,
Hmm.
and there's a funny one too. So I was like a big fan of Pete Rubish, like even when he was not natural,
Oh yeah,
and I would watch like his insane like 800 whatever deadlifts, and I was so young, I didn't know anything about steroids and all that at the time, so I just thought, oh, that's cool. Maybe now looking back, I probably wouldn't have gotten into it, but at the time, like I would see like this is something I would do in Taekwondo as well. Like we did forms and stuff like that. I would picture myself as the person I was trying to be as good as while I was doing the forms, and I feel like it would kind of clean my technique up because I would see their form in my head, not myself. I kind of did that with deadlifts with like Pete Rubish. I would like
yeah,
channel Pete Rubish through my deadlift, and that always helped with all my one rep maxes and stuff. So that might be an interesting technique people can try. Like think about like your favorite lifter and how they perform the lift, and just kind of
yeah.
channel that energy.
No, that's really smart. And I've done something similar with a guy who doesn't have as much notoriety, but hopefully one day will. Sam Sheethar, right?
Yeah.
He's a big, strong dude, and his
Beast.
deadlift technique, as he goes to pull that first rep, is very much a breathe and brace. I don't want to describe it wrong, but like breathe and brace, and then sit those hips. And as soon as those hips are locked in, he knows where that sweet spot is.
Yep.
Boom, right into the pull. Like you can see, he's getting the slack out of the bar as he's coming down, but once he's in that position, it's boom, it's right off the ground. It starts to move, and I've seen similar things from a lot of strong high level guys that can pull some crazy numbers. It's like you get down into the deadlift, and once you're in that position, boom, you take off. And that's what I try and mimic on my deadlifts.
And that like amount that your hips are going down is so different for everybody as well. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some people that almost look like they can squat their deadlift up. I'm like the opposite. Like if my hips are higher, like so much easier.
I think I'm biased towards that as well. The way I'm built, yeah, I have fairly high hips when I deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But yeah, the fact remains like once those hips like wedge in, like you're ready to pull.
yeah. You find your spot, you can just like rinse and repeat. Boom.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It matters so much even to that like that wedge, that first position. You hear techniques with powerlifting programming where people do, I'm sure you've heard this term where it's like a volume inversion. So let's say instead of doing 3 sets of 8 on deadlift, you do 8 sets of 3. So that way you have more opportunities to do a first rep. So you get like more practice with that type of thing, that technique. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much, other than RDLs, anytime I would deadlift, I would make sure like every single rep would be like completely new breath, and I would never do like more than like 5 or 6 reps, so this didn't take too long. But I would make sure that like every rep was pretty much the same. Like, and I'm not the type of guy who like the first rep is a lot harder and then it gets easier. Like I'm just like it gets harder and harder as the set goes on. But I used to do like a touch and go kind of thing, and that made my technique different on like the first rep, the second rep, and then towards the end I would stop doing touch and go, and then I would have to breathe. But now it's like streamlined. It's just all breathe, brace, pull, and then I like rest for like a second at the bottom, do it again. No like semi touch and go, nothing like that. And that really helped a lot towards the last time I was deadlifting. That was really getting me stronger.
Yeah. That's good. That's a very good practice, and it's like you said, you put the thought into it, and you can't just look. It's not rocket science to deadlift, but to visualize where your starting position is, where your bar goes, makes a difference. The way I've heard some people put it, it's like you don't have to control the deadlift on the way down, but you need to like just enough control that it lands where it started. Like, and once you kind of get it like below the knees, for me, it's like it can pretty much drop from that point. But once I started, I think I was probably somewhere between a 315 and a 405 deadlift. I had a big problem where like the bar would roll out. Like every rep I was bringing that bar back to me, and it didn't really matter. It just made my sets look sloppier and like take more time to like reset each rep. But what really helped was controlling it past the knees. Then you can go limp. Get it up, control it to the knees, then go limp. Like it's like you can't just drop it from the top and expect it to land perfectly the same spot, right?
Yeah, I got a funny story with that too. At the gym I've been going to this gym for so long, but when I was like I was like 16, 17, when I first started deadlifting there, I remember like I would not control the way down at all, and I would get yelled at. Like anytime I got above like 315, I would get yelled at.
Yep.
So maybe I was like almost 18 at this point, and I basically had to start controlling the eccentric, or just they would not let me deadlift. So,
or you're just banned.
I wasn't big enough or intimidating enough that like I could just do what I wanted at that point. So that I was like a kid, so I just listened, and it got to a point where I was like, you know what, I actually like this more, and I never got hurt doing that or anything like that. So I would always control it and stuff. I think that's why I came out the gate like really strong on RDLs, because I was used to controlling my deadlift on the way down. I always did that because I was essentially like deadlifting in a library for like 2 years, from like 17 to 19. And then they sort of like got into management and they didn't care anymore. But
yeah. No, that's good.
I had to do that. So,
and something like an RDL or a good morning, I could imagine, or a pause deadlift even, right? That would be a rude awakening to someone who just slams it every time. Like they're just not used to that sensation, that control. The technique's not on point. It's really important that you have an up and a down phase, and maybe the deadlift has somewhat of a reputation of, oh, don't do the eccentric, it's just an up phase. You can do a good bit of eccentric and not kill your back. It's probably good for it, if anything, to do some, at the very least.
I agree.
All right, well, here's a good topic maybe we could finish up on. So we talked about advanced, right? Programming doesn't have to get crazy complicated to keep making gains. Even for you, progression, a lot of it's very, very steady, very, it's not, you don't predict it perfectly, but you can anticipate it quite frequently and work with it. So that's the advanced side. Now going back to the beginner side, forget even definitions for a second, but you hear a lot of advice of beginners should train like this, or beginners should try push-ups instead of bench press, or I think even Steve Shaw, who I quite like, I really like Steve Shaw, says that beginners should focus more on, I don't want to misquote him, but as far as I understand in this case, beginners should focus more on machines and dumbbells and worry less about barbells, but specifically deadlifts and squats. My personal take is that even Olympic lifts, even those techniques we were talking about, advanced techniques, if you want to do drop sets, you want to do supersets, All of that stuff is available to the beginner as long as they just, start with what are they going to need more than anything? Forget about, tolerance and adaptation, technique, right? Like technique needs to be there no matter what. So the beginner is going to need to spend more time getting good at making the reps look good compared to everyone else. But other than that, my opinion is, Aidan, you can do calisthenics, you can do weighted calisthenics as a beginner, you can do machines, dumbbells, you can do even complicated things like Olympic lifting if you're willing to learn it. I've got an 11-year-old cousin who's like top three nationally ranked little girls in Canada who does Olympic lifting. She can snatch like over 100 pounds. Like it's just
That's
like
crazy.
it's like, so at what point are you too young and too stupid, too inexperienced? Like if you just
Yeah.
like practice, you can get good with any of it. So is there any piece of advice where you'd say this is how beginners should train, or do you disagree with that concept more or less like I do?
Man, this is gonna sound cheesy, and there's gonna be a lot of like the optimal crowd that's gonna hate this, but like when you're starting out, especially when you're not like fully committed to the gym yet, I think you just need to find any sort of plan that you can stick to that you enjoy. Like if you don't enjoy it, you're not gonna make that much progress. Like if you're doing some crazy stuff that some guy told you was optimal, and maybe it is optimal, if you're not like if you don't have like a burning passion to go into the gym and do that, like every time you have to do that, you're gonna make less gains than if you went in on your little simple Oonga Boonga program that you made that you like. So I think there's just a certain point where it's like you just gotta do what you like. And I've made way
Absolutely.
more gains doing that than like uh, doing preset plans that other people made that I thought, oh, this is someone else made this. They're smarter than me. They're gonna get me right. But it's like all the plans I've made for myself have ended up giving me pretty much the most gains, at least in recent years. Like,
Some
there's
pretty
obviously
sick
like a
gains.
few,
Some pretty
but
sick gains, if I do say so.
yeah, the past like year and a half has been all just my own programming, just my own intuition for myself, and I have the same thing that I do for like a few people, and I just kind of I substitute myself in for their intuition, and then I just ask them like if stuff hurts and stuff like that. But once they get that like portfolio of exercises, it's the program looks so similar to mine, even though they're a beginner, and they still make great gains. So
Amazing. Amazing. I really like the way you put that, fun and passion. Can't get away from it. It needs to be an emphasis, especially at the start, right? Otherwise, what are you doing?
you're not
If
gonna
you've
keep
never
doing it.
tried exercise, it's not gonna be like, okay, it's time for this, Navy SEAL training, bro. It's
Yeah,
like,
no,
you don't start at David Goggins like day one.
no. I think only David Goggins can do David Goggins.
Pretty much,
Anyways,
eh? Yeah.
yeah.
No, and you see that with sports too, right? Like if you see like a kids martial arts class or some other sport, like there's got to be an emphasis on fun and some games. So, if you have some guys like in PE class and they're like, this is if I were a fitness teacher or trying to get kids interested in it, we would do some challenges for fun. Like, let's see who can hold the plank the longest, or,
Yeah.
one of those, the Bring Sally Up, that challenge, right? It's that
I've
song,
not heard of
Bring
that one.
Bring Sally Up, Bring Sally Down, and the idea is you push up and down, and then it goes around and round, and so you go up and down doing push-ups as the song goes, and it's like a 3-minute song. So it's like if you can survive Bring Sally Up, you've got good upper body strength is basically like
Interesting.
the thing. So things like that are really good at getting like young men just like hyped up, like, yeah, I'm gonna do more push-ups than you. Is it optimal? No, but it's fun, and it's like it gives you an idea of like how strong you are and like some simple thing that you can do better, right? So stuff like that is just awesome in my opinion. Get people in the door.
I've noticed too. The people I see actually get jacked and make the most progress are people that just love this so much, and it's never the people that like have their face like buried in a book or they're just constantly like.
Excuse me, that's
It's
not
good to
optimal.
it's good to get as much information as you can, but like once you get snobbish about it like that, like I don't know, man.
Yeah, yeah. When you're in the
Gotta dial
comments
it back.
section, you're in the comments section and you're referencing a meta-analysis. Man, this stuff has gone way over your head. You're too far in.
How
You're too,
often do you see like a really jacked, strong guy doing that?
yeah,
Pretty
it's a good
rare.
question. You know what I
There's
see
maybe
instead?
five of them.
You know what I see instead? Do you know Death Grip Derek?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, the guy's a monster. Obviously, he jokes about being that. He's clearly not. He's
Yeah.
untested powerlifter for people who don't know. Guy's like 240. He just totaled something like 2293, so like just shy of 2300. He's got 20-inch arms. So for those who say size and strength isn't optimal, you tell me if that's not an optimal power building physique. And you know what he talks about? He jokes about, eating chicken nuggets and drinking chocolate milk and being better than everyone else, and then just lifting and then doing
See, he's
jujitsu and stuff.
joking, but like
Yeah.
I actually eat like that. So, no, but he probably
Exactly.
he could too,
Exactly.
honestly. Like people, there's like another misconception that like you have to eat chicken breast and have like this insanely high protein amount and like all this other
Yeah.
stuff. It's like,
Yeah, you gotta hire a dietitian if you want to be high level.
bro, and it was like those old school bodybuilders that were trying to like use that as an excuse for like the steroid usage. Be like, oh well, you're not working hard enough, and you're also not eating like me. It's like, bro, you're not even eating like you. Like a lot
Yeah.
of them, at least.
Yeah,
But
exactly. A lot of classic bodybuilder stuff was just like, I don't know, I'll just throw some more eggs in, I guess. So you wouldn't say, just to finish off for the audience, you wouldn't hesitate or you wouldn't caution beginners to not train with a certain type of implement. You don't think there's a lot of things that are, or maybe anything, hey, that's off limit to beginners. Don't do that.
mm,
You'd be hard pressed, eh?
yeah, I mean, I think like once their form is good, it's even safe to max out, occasionally and stuff like that. But I think just get good form, get good at training hard, and hope that you start to enjoy it. That's
Yep.
pretty much all you need, and then the rest, like you can learn about it as you go and stuff. Like you don't need like this perfect like giga
Yeah.
beginner program to just
Yep.
start. Like there's
Yep.
people with no muscle that already know all this intricate stuff about programming. It's like, bro, I don't even need that yet. Like you definitely don't.
Yep.
So
You don't need permission to do barbells
you
or
don't need
certain
anyone's
type.
permission. Do what
No,
you
no,
want to
no.
do.
Yeah, do your supersets, go have fun, do whatever, but be safe, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, like if I were to commit to muscle snatches, I don't know how to muscle snatch properly. Am I a beginner?
Learn.
No, but and that exercise, I'm a beginner. So it's
Yeah,
like no matter who you are, you still have to learn the process of doing things right.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Aiden. It's a pleasure. It's great to
Had a
digitally
great
meet
time.
you and talk to you, man. So
For
thanks
sure, man.
for
Thanks.
sharing your thoughts with the audience. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Aidan Insua. YouTube is also Aidan Insua. And then I've started doing coaching. So my coaching is insuatraining@gmail.com. And
Fantastic. Awesome. He comes highly recommended. He's a knowledgeable Jack dude, and it's my pleasure to have him on the channel. So, folks,
appreciate it.
like, comment, share, subscribe. Go give Aiden a follow. If you're looking for a coach, hit him up.
See you
Awesome.
guys.